So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a graph using Google Sheets. So let's look at our example over here. I have the initial height in meters as my independent variable, and whatever goes in the first column is always your independent variable. And then I have the time in seconds as my dependent variable. Now, one thing that you need to check before you start graphing is to make sure that the actual numbers don't have units with them. So here it just says 1.6 in this cell. It doesn't say 1.6 meters. And if it did, the program wouldn't be able to graph it. So you want to make sure that all of your cells just have numbers here and not units. And once you've done that, you can start by clicking on the top row of your data and then dragging over to your second column and then highlighting all of your data at once. And you want to make sure that you do not include the labels up top here. You just want to include the numbers. Then we go up to this button, Insert, and we click on it. We scroll down to the Chart button, and we click on that. And then this is our graphing program. So to get started here, we're going to click on Chart Types up top. Scroll down to the Scatter Charts and click on this one with the red and blue dots. Then we're going to go to the Customization tab, and then we have to put in all our labels for the graph. So I'm going to start with the title, and I'm going to keep it simple. If we remember what our independent and dependent variable are, it's height and time. So I'm going to write height versus time, just something very simple like that. And then you just click outside the box, and then the title appears right here on your graph. Now you might notice we have this weird blue dot on the outside of the graph here, and we actually don't want that. So what we're going to do is in this legend box right here, we're going to click on it and scroll down to none, and then that blue dot goes away. So now we have to label the axes, the x-axis here and then the y-axis over here. So we scroll down to this axis box right here, and it's already set to horizontal, which means that whatever label we put in this title box is going to go right here underneath the graph. So the x-axis, or the horizontal axis, is always the independent variable, and the y-axis here is always the dependent variable. So if we look here, the independent variable is initial height, and so I'm just going to write height and then meters in parentheses, or m, to show what the unit is. Then we click outside, and then it appears right underneath our graph. We have to do the same thing for the y-axis here. So over in this drop-down menu where it says horizontal, we're going to click on it, scroll down to left vertical, and now whatever we put in the title box will go over here on the y-axis. So going back to my data set, my dependent variable is time in seconds, so I'm just going to write that, time, and then s in parentheses to represent seconds, and then click outside, and then my new label appears right there. So now my chart is done, so I just click the Insert button, and it appears right in my spreadsheet, and then I can move it so it's not covering up my data, and now I have my graph. So if you have quantitative data, which means that you only have numbers for both your independent and your dependent variable, then you can stop this video right here and just go back to creating your own graph. But if you have what's called qualitative data, where either your independent variable or your dependent variable is not a number, then you're going to want to stay tuned for the next part of this video. So now I'm going to show you how to make a graph with qualitative data. So you can see here that even though my dependent variable, the average period of motion, is a number, my independent variable, the type of pendulum bob, is not a number. We're basically changing the object that's used in a pendulum and measuring its effect on the average period of motion. Now, just in case you're confused by that, a pendulum is simply an object hanging from a string that can swing back and forth. So basically what this experiment is doing is it's changing the object that's being used on the bottom here and measuring how it affects how long it takes for this to swing back and forth. So back to our data, we're going to start with the same steps that we used to graph the quantitative data, which is first to check to make sure that our numbers for the dependent variable don't have units. So you can see in the top label that the unit is seconds here, but my numbers don't have that unit written in. So you need to make sure that it just has the number in the cell, and that's it for your dependent variable. So now I'm going to click on the top row just like we did before, highlight all of the data, and again leave out the labels up top. You just want to have the data highlighted. So then we're going to go to Insert and then click on Chart, same as before, and you can see here that it already comes up with a different chart. So this is the right type of chart that we want to use, but just in case it doesn't come up like this, you would go to Chart Types and then scroll down to Column and then click on the first one. But you can see it's the same thing. So then we're going to go to the Customization tab, and then from this point forward, it's exactly the same as our previous graph. So we're going to start by creating a title. So if we look back at our independent and dependent variables, we have the type of pendulum bob and then the average period of motion. So I'm going to say pendulum bob versus period of motion, and then click outside the title box and my title appears right there. So once again we have this weird box here that we want to get rid of, so we're going to go to the legend, and then right here in this drop down menu we'll scroll down to none, and then this box over here goes away. Now we have to label our x-axis or horizontal axis and our y-axis or vertical axis. So we'll scroll down to where it says axis, and then it's already set to horizontal, which means that we're labeling the x-axis. And if we look back to our data, the type of pendulum bob is our independent variable. So we'll write type of pendulum bob, then click outside the box, and then our label appears right here. So now we have to do the same thing for the vertical axis. So we go up to the axis box, click on this drop down menu that says horizontal, change it to left vertical, and then whatever we enter in this title box is going to show up over here. So I'm going to type average period of motion, and then the unit is seconds, so I want to make sure I include that by writing S in parentheses to represent seconds. And we click outside the box and it appears right here on the axis, and then our chart is done now, so we can click Insert and then it appears right here. We move it so it's not covering up our data, and then we're done. So hopefully this video showed you how to create a graph with your type of data, either the quantitative that's only numbers or the qualitative that has some values that are numbers and some values that are not numbers.